our new stream. So let's see what that shows. Of course, there's a minute delay, so and somebody just came. Going in.
It's up.
Okay.
It's up now.
Okay, so now what do we need to do to keep that from happening?
Stay there, maybe zoom in and zoom out a bit every now and then.
Okay. Yeah, so every few minutes just zoom in, zoom out. So we'll do that. Assalamu alaikum. So Brother Suleiman just came. So actually it's good he came because I was waiting on him anyway. He had texted me a message or a question, which I didn't respond to at that time because I figured I would talk about it today. And then Kyle had asked me a question the other day, which is actually connected. So Suleiman's question was, how do we love, you ask it. Is how do we love the Prophet ﷺ and the family?
Yeah, and the family and the companion.
Yeah. So how do we attain that love? And then Brother Kyle's question was about those people who came against the household and our approach towards them. So as far as loving the family and loving the Prophet ﷺ, as well as the companions, when you love somebody, then you're going to love all of the ones that they love. Yeah. So, and you're going to love everything that is connected to that person in a good way. So, part of loving Rasulullah ﷺ is to know him. And, but also to acknowledge that we are nothing without him. So that acknowledgement, that humility has to be there. Otherwise, the arrogance starts to set in. And that mindset of, oh, he's just like me. Anyone who tells you, anyone who is allegedly praising the Prophet ﷺ while he's finding faults in him, that becomes an issue. Because there are those who say, oh, we need to follow the Sunnah. Well, and their whole concept of Sunnah is keep a big beard. I mean, that's the only Sunnah they know. And because even Pharaoh had a beard, Abu Jahl had a beard. But it's why you keep the beard that makes the difference. And not to keep the beard because, this is a religious thing. But you keep it, for his sake. Period. You have to understand that everything that we should be doing is for the pleasure of Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so all of this, and like in Urdu we say that ishq jo hai kiya nahi jata, ishq ho jata hai. You don't, well, how would you translate? You don't do love, love just happens. I guess that would be the easiest way to translate it. But, so that's a door in the heart that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens for those who are willing to humble themselves before His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is also a gift from Allah. But in order to attain that gift, we have to humble ourselves before Him. And so that, and one criteria of love is that the lover can find no faults in the beloved. Like they say in English, love is blind, and it's true. And the reality is love, true love is blind. If I claim to be loving someone and yet I find faults in them, there's an issue with my love. So people who claim to love Rasulullah ﷺ and then they want to talk about what he didn't know or what he couldn't do, well, that becomes an issue. Because again, like Hassan bin Thabit radiallahu anhu, he stated, خُلُقْتَ مُبَرًّا مِنْ كُلِّ عَيْبٍ that you are created without any faults, without any shortcomings. And he's saying this in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has spread his sheet and told him to say something. Okay. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself told him, say something. You know. And then when he says this, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam doesn't contradict him or doesn't correct him. You know. So not knowing something is a shortcoming. You know, so Allah has created him and given him the knowledge. Allah has created him and given him the authority. And so again, you know, realizing that he is khayr khalqillah, that he is the best creation of Allah. It was, you hear people talk about Jannah, you know, this and that about Jannah, and you know, there's such and such, and there are things in Jannah that the eye has never seen, the ear has never heard, and the mind has never imagined. And yet they're imagining Jannah. Okay. Jannah is nothing without Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if Jannah is like this, and Jannah is a creation of Allah, and yet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is greater than Jannah, then you know there is no Jannah without him. So understanding these points, knowing these things, and acknowledging them, and you know, kind of humbling your heart using these things, you know, so then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you that gift of the love. But then you also understand also that the household isn't just anybody. These literally are parts of him. You know, he says about his daughter, Bibi Fatima salam alayhi, Fatima bidatu minni. She is a part of me. How can I claim to love him and yet not love his part? You know, with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's an issue of taking the whole package. And so, you know, and Hassan and Hussein, you know, and then there's a narration, you know, which is, or should be undisputable, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Oh Allah, love Hassan and Hussein, and love their father and their mother." You know, he's making this dua not because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't love them. He's making this dua so we understand that these are the beloved of Allah. And so again, if we want to claim to love Allah, then we can't love Allah without loving Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We can't love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam without loving his household. And we can't love the household without understanding the status and the importance of the companions. Because if you look at the ones who defended, you know, because the household is the one who defended the honor of the companions. You know, when Uthman, when Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu was in trouble, who came to his support? Ali. When Umar radhiyallahu anhu had any questions, who came to his support? Ali. When Uthman radhiyallahu anhu was in trouble, who defended and came to his support? Ali. Who placed both of his sons at the doors of Uthman radhiyallahu anhu to defend him? Ali radhiyallahu anhu, who at that time is the head of the household. These are the decisions of the head of the household, defending the honor and the lives of the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So how can you not love them? And so all of this, you know, is all tied in, and all of this is part of the love. And this is why, you know, when you love somebody, you want to hear about them and you want to talk about them. You know, so, you know, when you start talking about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and people are starting to get, you know, and you're praising him and they're, oh, you know, everybody's on edge, you kind of wonder what group you're with. Oh, somebody's going to do shirk here. You know, he's praising him too much. Oh, come on. There is no way to praise Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in excess. The only way, except for one, which is to claim that he is God or part of God. That he is divine or part of divinity. And no one does that. And short of that, there's no way to praise him in excess. Because I don't even, in order to praise someone in excess, I have to know what his limit is. And then I can know, okay, I'm going beyond the limit. I don't even know where his limit is. I don't even know where his beginning is, much less his limit. So, so again, all of these are parts of that love. So, I got migraine and the allergies are kicking in too. So, but again, all of these are parts of that love, and if we don't, there is no iman without that love. And people don't understand this, because it's this natural thing these days, or not natural, but the normal thing these days, that, you talk about Islam and you're talking about, we pray and we fast and we do this and we do that and we don't do this and we don't do that. 13 years in Mecca, and you really didn't have any do's and don'ts. For 13 years, all you have is iman. And as I was mentioning the other night, when Quraysh would punish the Muslims, when they would torture the Muslims, they never told them, say something against Allah. Because they themselves believed in Allah. Their concept of Allah was messed up, but they believed in Allah. They always told them, say something against Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Bibi Sumayya radiallahu anha, who was the first martyr in Islam, it's not that she's the first woman to be martyred, she is the first martyr in Islam. And she was martyred, by Abu Jahl piercing her private parts with a spear. And what were they saying to her? Just say something against him. Just say something against him. That was it. That is love. When I look at the actions later on, the obligation of salat, okay, Rasulullah said that the coolness of my eyes is in salat. So now that should drive me to make salat. Not because, somehow I'm worshiping Allah in some unusual way. My worship of Allah is imperfect at best. I think that I'm making salat and my mind is all over the place. I do this because I'm presenting myself before my Lord the way Rasulullah ﷺ wanted me to. We do everything, and we should do everything for the pleasure of Allah and His Messenger. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So this is all part of that love. And again, when you love somebody, and you want to hear about them, you want to talk about them, and when you hear anything negative about them, then your blood just boils. And again, there is no loving Rasulullah without loving the companions. You look at who safeguarded, the companions were involved in spreading the religion. But who safeguarded the purity of the religion? I mean, why did Imam Hussein al-Islam do what he did? I mean, you have thousands of qadis at that time putting out Sharia laws. You have millions of people making salat, fasting, all of these things. And yet Imam Hussein al-Islam makes this great sacrifice where he sacrifices his whole family. to safeguard the purity of the religion. There's a hadith in Musnad Ahmad, as well as other books of hadith, where Rasulullah says to Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh, he says that I have struggled for the revelation of this Quran, and you will struggle for the meaning of the Quran against its false interpretation. Which also tells us that that struggle is going to be an internal struggle. The struggle that Ali Radhan is going to go through is an internal struggle, because you don't. I don't need to worry about Christian coming and trying to misinterpret the Quran. So who's going to be misinterpreting the Quran other than the ones who claim to be Muslim? When we look at Imam Hussein al-Islam, internal struggle. Everyone who came against him claimed to be Muslim, said the kalma, made salat. You have people there who are qadis, 500 qadis, thousands of huffaz who come against him. And, these are people who used to lead the salat in the masjids. He made sure they knew who he was and they knew what they were doing before any battle took place or any fighting took place. So that way they have no excuse on the Day of Judgment. But again, these superficial things, you can put a dressing on anything. Like you can, you look at this, like, easy example, construction these days. They put these houses up like this. And then after a year or two, the foundation's cracking, this is happening, that's happening, all these other problems. Why? Because, and they make it look really nice from the outside. So they put up this nice facade. But the foundation's no good. Which means what? The house has no value in reality. There's this building on the corner here. They can't sell it and they can't even fix it because the foundation's so bad. So when the foundation when there's no foundation, nothing matters. And so Iman is the reality of that foundation. If that foundation is not there, you can dress it up all you want on top. It means absolutely nothing. Now, as far as Brother Kyle's question was about those who came against the household. And so, there you have to understand. This is one of the reasons I talk about this a good bit, because unfortunately there's so much garbage out there. And then when you listen to other various groups, they have various explanations for a lot of things which are not correct. Because Ahl Sunnah, we love the household, we also love the companions, and we keep the honor and the respect of all of them. We understand that we don't compare apples to oranges. These days there's a lot of that too. The household is the household. And Rasulullah is from amongst the household. That's why he said, Nahnu Ahlul Bayt, we the Ahlul Bayt. So he included himself, but he didn't include himself in the companions. Okay? So there's always that distinction. But when we look at this, so and before I mention that, there's a point to understand. Battle of Badr, which took place in Ramadan, 17th of Ramadan. If we have time, we'll talk about that at some point, inshallah, as well. So, Battle of Badr, before the fighting begins, Rasulullah ﷺ gives his army, the 313 companions, a list of people, a list of names, and he tells them that if you see them in the battlefield, then avoid confrontation with them. Avoid trying to hurt them or fight them, if you can. Because these are people who have not come with animosity against us, but they've become because of social pressures and other things. So there's a difference, and this is where, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh, that only a believer will have love for you, and only a hypocrite will have animosity against you. So here in Badr, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, okay, these are people who are coming against us, but they don't have any animosity against us. They've come because of others' social pressure and other situations. So even though they're coming against us, he said, avoid hurting them. So we've got to keep that in mind. And that's an important distinction to make here. So when I look at when Ali radhiyallahu anhu becomes the Khalifa, and before he accepted the Khilafah, this is also important to understand. They offered him the Khilafah after the martyrdom of Uthman radhiyallahu anhu. They offer him the Khilafah. He says, I don't want it. He says, you choose amongst yourselves, and whoever you choose, I will support him. They come back to him, they say, there's no one else who can handle the situation but you. So he says, fine, I'll accept it under the condition that all of the companions of Badr. I didn't hear that. Somebody say something? Okay. He says, I'll accept it under the condition that all of the companions of Badr give me bay'ah, give allegiance to me. If they all are willing to agree, then I accept it. If not, go find somebody else. They all agreed. So he sits in the masjid on the minbar of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they all gave him bay'ah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, other narrations about Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh. He says that the truth is with Ali and Ali is with the truth. The haqq is with Ali and Ali is with the haqq. He also says in the hadith in Tirmizi, where he makes the way, he says, oh Allah, whichever way Ali goes, make haqq go that way. So, but he also says to Sayyidina Ali, radiyallahu anhu, he says that you will fight against the oath breakers, against the rebellious, and against the deviants. So when we look at, so they gave him bay'ah, and then all the propaganda. So you got to understand, propaganda, deception is deception because even intelligent people get caught up in it. Even sincere people can get caught up in the deception. And the companions, and this is something that I'm going to talk about in Friday as well, inshallah, since we're talking about Imam Hassan alayhi salam. The companions are not masoom. They're not innocent. They are mahfuz. They are protected. And this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that my companions are like stars. If you follow any one of them, you'll be rightly guided. But what does that mean? We are not masoom. We're going to make mistakes. If we don't have examples to follow when we make those mistakes, then how will we correct those mistakes? Right? If we don't have examples, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is masoom. There are many things that we can't follow him in. There are certain things he told us not to follow him in. Okay? And I'm not going to get into the details of those. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, again, anyone who thinks that he's like him, he lost his iman. Okay. We aren't even like the companions, okay, but we can follow the companions because they made mistakes. But the following isn't in, okay, they made a mistake, so I'm going to make the same mistake. No. It's, I've made mistakes, so now how do I correct this mistake? Let me see. This is where we're following the companions. This is why they are stars, and if we follow them, then we will be guided, because they will teach us how to get out of these mistakes. Okay? So, he says you will fight against the oath breakers. So what happens? Propaganda is going on, and what is the propaganda? Propaganda is, oh, Ali isn't going to take revenge for the murder of Uthman. And part of the other propaganda is, oh, Ali is the one who planned all of this, so he could become the Khalifa. Okay. You know, which is funny because he's offered the Khilafah and he says, I don't want it. But again, you know, this is propaganda at the time also. I mean, you look at the propaganda today. We've got internet and people can respond immediately, but the propaganda, you look at how people get all caught up in it, right? Well, we're talking about a time when they couldn't, there's no phone, so you can't call the other guy and say, okay, look, what's going on? You know, give me the rundown on this. You can't do that. You know, you get and you know, the rebellion was a well-honed machine. These hypocrites at this point had become a well-honed machine. So when they're going into these villages and in these towns spreading this propaganda, they're making sure that it's sticking. Talha and Zubair radiallahu anhuma, both of these are Ashra Mubashara. Both of the 10 who were given the glad tidings. Both of these are companions of Badr. Okay. Both of these gave oath to Ali radiallahu anhu in Medina, and they immediately left there and come to Mecca to give the news to the wife of Rasulullah who was on Hajj, Bibi Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha. But as they arrive, the propaganda is going on. Oh, Ali's refusing to take revenge for Uthman. And they say, why? What's going on? We were just there. But now they get here, now the propaganda. So they, along with Aisha Siddiqa, they get people together. Ali radiallahu is leaving Medina because he knows if he stays in Medina, these people have no limits. So what are they going to do to the city of Rasulullah? So he leaves Medina for Kufa. Because he wants to get all of this turmoil and all this commotion and hooligans and hoodlums out of Medina. So he moves to Kufa. Here, they're following suit to find out, okay, what's going on? They come to Basra first. And then from Basra, now the armies are going to meet. Okay, so you have the army, of Aisha radiallahu anha. And you have the army of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh. And when they get, and I'm not going to go into a lot of the other details of this, about the dogs of Hawab and all of that, because I want to focus on a certain aspect. But all of what I'm saying is kind of important to understand the aspect. They arrive, it's late in the day. Ali radiallahu anhu rides out with his 2 sons. Their name was Salam. And Talha and Zubair radiallahu anhuma, they come from the other side. And they meet, and they talk. And the agreement is that tomorrow morning after Fajr, Ali radiallahu anhu will meet with Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, and they will hash this out. Okay. The hypocrites have infiltrated both armies, and they know that if they hash things out, then we're doomed. Because that means there's going to be peace, and Ali radiallahu anhu can actually focus on dealing with us. So a group attacks, and this is in the middle of the night. And this is, if you look at warfare at that time, they didn't fight at night. You look at even like the battles years later. Fighting started after daybreak, and when sunset, fighting ended. Because you can't see each other. You don't know who you're killing. In the middle of the night, a group attacks the army of Aisha and says that Ali sent us, and a group from here attacks the army of Ali and says Aisha sent us. So one says Ali sent us, the other says Aisha sent us, and in the middle of the night you get this whole war going on, known as Battle of the Camels. Jamal. Many camels were hamstrung in this battle. Many camels were killed, so it became known as the Battle of the Camels. But you got all of this commotion in the middle of the night. But if you look at this, again, there's no animosity amongst these companions against Ali. You get this commotion that starts this fight. They didn't come to fight. They came for a resolution. But everyone who came there also corrected his mistake. Because again, Ali is with the truth and the truth is with Ali. So what happens during the battle is that Ali sees Zubair and reminds him of something that Rasulullah had said many years. These are cousins. Ali and Zubair are cousins. The mother of Zubair radiallahu is the Safiya bint Abdul Muttalib, the daughter of the grandfather of Ali radiallahu grandfather. So he sees them because one time they were playing, wrestling playing, and Rasulullah said that today they are playing and one day they will fight and Ali will be on the truth. He reminds him of that. And Zubair, in the middle of the battle going on, he asked Ali, you're not going to ask the one that you have animosity against, oh, what do I do? He asked Ali, what do I do now? So he tells him, leave. Get out of here. Which is exactly what he did. The hypocrites saw him leaving, though. They followed him, and while he was making salat in this valley, they martyred him. Talha radiallahu, when he realized what's going on, he starts backing off from the battle. This is what you call ruju, is when they, you retreat from your position. So when they realized the reality of it, now they retreat from their position. So he's retreating from his position that, no, we shouldn't be fighting against Ali, we should be with him. That realization came now. He starts to retreat from the position, and Marwan bin Hakam shot him with an arrow, where Marwan was in his army. Aisha radiallahu camel is attacked. Ali radiallahu sees this and he sends her brother. Both of the brothers of Aisha radiallahu were in the army of Ali radiallahu. Muhammad bin Abu Bakr and Abdul Rahman bin Abu Bakr were both in the army of Ali, fighting alongside with Ali radiallahu. So he sends Muhammad bin Abu Bakr and one of the other companions. He says, go and protect her, because he saw that her camel was being attacked. They had hamstrung her camel when she was in the hodaj in her camel. When all this started, she got into her camel. They attack it. So Muhammad bin Abu Bakr catches her as she's falling, her brother. And I won't say, other stuff right now, because again, it detracts from the emphasis that I want to make. Ali rides up to her and says that, are you hurt, oh my mother? Because she's the mother of the believers. She is the wife of Rasulullah, so she's the mother. She says, are you hurt, oh my mother? No. And she says, may Allah forgive you. These are not the words of anyone who has animosity against each other. Rasulullah SAW had told Ali radhiyallahu anhu that this would happen, that there would be an issue, and when it happens, return her to her place safely. He says, treat her gently and return her to her place safely. And so he does exactly as Rasulullah SAW has commanded him. He treats her gently and has her brother, Muhammad bin Abu Bakr, and another companion return her to Medina Munawwara. But she retreats from her position, and she never got involved in any of these other political issues after that. So anyone who's going to claim that, oh, see, they came after Ali, this is what one of the claims of the Shia is. Oh, see, they came after Ali, so they were, so they left Islam and all this other nonsense. But when you look at the reality of what's going on, then you realize, oh, it's a totally different situation. But whoever came against Ali, whether with animosity or without animosity, they were not on the truth, except that they were fulfilling certain things. Because there are verses of the Quran that could not be fulfilled during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Surah Surah Hujurat, Surah number 49, verse number 9. And the verse starts off with in ta'ifatani. Okay. If two parties among the believers fall into fight, make ye peace between them. But if one of them transgresses beyond bounds against the other, then fight ye all against the one that transgresses until it complies with the command of Allah. But if it complies, then make peace between them and justice, and be fair, for Allah loves those who are fair and just. Okay. So these are two parties of believers that fall into a dispute. Okay. And Allah says what? Make peace between them. But if one of them transgresses, force them into the peace. Right? I mean, that's what the verse says. Could this verse be applied during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And I already told you the answer to this. No. Why not? Because if there was a dispute between two parties during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who would they come to, for a decision? They would come to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And whoever didn't accept his decision, in this verse, you got two parties. One doesn't accept a decision, right? Both parties are Muslims. One's not accepting a decision, and then it says, okay, then you force them. But they're still Muslim. If they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he made a decision, and one did not comply with the decision, they are no longer Muslim. And this is, verse 65 of Surah Nisa, Surah number 4. فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لا يؤمنون حتى يحكموك فيما شجر بينهم ثم لا يجدوا في أنفسهم حرجا مما قضيت ويسلموا تسليما. And just the beginning of this verse, I mean, it's just I don't know, it's just so beautiful. It says, فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by himself, but the way he swears by himself, he says, "Fala," but no, to re-emphasize, this is, "Fala wa rabbika," but by, by none other than your Lord. Whose Lord? The Lord of Rasulullah, so the Lord of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to himself, swears by himself as the Lord of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So no, by your Lord, by thy Lord, they can have no real faith until they make thee judge in all disputes between them. And if in their souls, and find in their souls no resistance against thy decision, but accept them with the fullest conviction. It says, no, by your Lord, they can have no real faith until they make thee judge. They have no faith. They have no iman. فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. They are not believers until they make you a judge in all of their affairs. And then not only that you judge, because, okay, they can, somebody comes and says, okay, we want you to make the decision, and he makes a decision, I'll accept it, but I don't really like it. They aren't even believers. That they accept your decision with, not only are they accept it, they love whatever you decide for them. This is the characteristic of the believer. So if I look at the earlier verse in Surah Hujurat, there's no way that could be applied during the time of Rasulullah. So we know those are things that are going to happen, so we have to have an example. So this is what we see in the next battle, which is the Battle of Siffin, where Rasulullah said you will fight against those who are rebellious. So we see that in Siffin. Okay. So both parties remain Muslim. In Siffin, you have them fighting against Ali again. But then he said what? He said you will also fight against the deviants. Deviants mean those are the ones who have exited. And we see that in Nahran. So when we're looking at the companions, and the definition, this is an important definition to understand. The definition of a companion is someone who saw Rasulullah ﷺ with Iman and died on that Iman. Because you do have people who saw him with Iman, but then when the age of apostasy came, right after him, during the first 6 months of the Khilafah of Abu Bakr, they apostated. And then when Abu Bakr sent the armies around, some of them came back into Islam. But they don't fit that definition anymore. So yeah, they're Muslim. They now are tabi'i because they're not dying on the Iman that they saw Rasulullah ﷺ with. Just like with a Sayyid, with someone from the household of Rasulullah. There's a lot of people, they talk about Sayyids, oh, he's doing this and he's doing that. Doesn't make him non-Sayyid. I still have to respect and honor him because he is from the lineage of Rasulullah. Unless what he's doing is to the level of kufr, is taking him out of Islam. Because he didn't become Sayyid by some action that he did. This is the gift of Allah. So he's not going to become non-Sayyid by some action he does unless he leaves Islam. The same with the companions. I can't use a specific action and say, oh, this makes them non-companions anymore. Again, unless that action is kufr. Unfortunately these days you got everybody, oh, he's kafir, everybody's kafir. Who's Muslim? Because everybody's kafir. So we have to be very careful when we look at these things. And so just because some group came against Ali, doesn't mean that they are hypocrites. If they came against him with animosity, then that's a whole different issue. But you have certain companions who came against Ali, but what did they do? They withdrew from their positions. When the reality came out, they said, oh. So we need to be aware, this, so we don't need to get sucked into certain propaganda, where people are abusing and cursing various companions, and then you have other people who are trying to belittle the status of the household of Rasulullah. Okay. I don't know if that answers your question. I think it does.
How about the people today?
Well, you know, you look at them, because you have people who, you know, you've got a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing, so as far as people today are concerned. So when you look at people today, you kind of, you know, you need to, just like with Imam Hussein al-Islam, you know, everyone who came after him in Karbala is kafir. There's no way around that. Because he made sure they knew who he was. So if someone, after knowing who Imam Hussein al-Islam is, still belittles his position, then, you know, that raises, you know, a huge red flag. You know, because if I question Imam Hussein al-Islam, then I also have to question the Islam that has come to us. And unfortunately, a lot of these people are pushing the same Islam that the Yazidis were pushing. Yazidi meaning those followers of Yazid, which is governmental Islam. You know, it's the political Islam. That, oh, you know, you can't say anything against the leader. Yeah, I mean, you know, and whatever the leader says, doesn't matter what he does. Which is also funny, because if you look at how they got to power, what do? They challenged the leaders. I mean, you look at like the Saudi government. How did the Saudi government become the Saudi government? They overthrew and killed and murdered the Ottomans, who were the Muslim leaders. So if you can't go against the Muslim leaders, then why did you go against the Muslim leaders? Now you claim, oh no, you can't fight against me because I'm the Muslim leader. But how did you become the leader? So which tells me that the basis of your government, if you can't go against the Muslim leader, then the basis of your government itself is false. Because you went against the Muslim leaders. So, you know, so again, you know, when you look at people today, you kind of have to really, you know, very careful. You know, unfortunately, there are many people today that really, you know, and especially, you know, amongst people that have come into Islam, who have never heard of Imam Hussein al-Islam. And not just that, certain people from certain areas. You know, like Brother Iskandar, who was here, you know, the thing that really got him coming initially was our program on Imam Hussein al-Islam, because he said, oh, they don't talk about him over there. And the reason they don't want to talk about him is because then people will start questioning the government. So these are mandates from above to control the people. So you know, we are very careful in labeling anybody non-Muslim. But the actions of a lot of people, you know, are kufr by definition, in that they are hiding the truth. And especially when you listen to these so-called scholars, who you know they know. But then when you question them on it, they want to give you a sidetrack answer. You know, it's like, you know, this was like in the late 80s. This guy came from Saudi. He was the head of Dawah from Riyadh. And it was Ramadan. And he came and, you know, so an announcement was made, oh, great sheikh from Saudi has come. And he's going to give a talk after Maghrib. So right after Maghrib, finished Fard Salat, he sits up on the minbar and the announcers, and he starts saying, oh, don't make your sunnah, come and listen to me, because this is more important, come listen to me. So then he starts talking, and he starts giving a typical speech that they would give then was, oh, bid'ah, what's the bid'ah? So anything that wasn't done during the time of Rasulullah is bid'ah. And whoever does bid'ah is, is misguided, and all misguidance is in the fire. Kullu bid'atin dalala, kullu dalalatin finnar. They misused this hadith of Rasulullah. And he started, and he went on and on. And so afterwards, my father went to him and sat down, and that, he has his entourage with him, of course. And so my father said, oh, I liked your speech, and it's nice teaching, you give a good definition of bid'ah. But then, you're talking about the bid'ah that nothing, anything that wasn't done during the time of Rasulullah is bid'ah. So he says, well, what about the Quran, the Mus'haf? The compilation of this wasn't done during the time of Rasulullah. So now he changed the definition. He said, well, whatever wasn't done during the time of the Prophet and during the time of the Khulafa Rashidin. This is okay. Well, what about the Fatah, Dhamma, and Kasra? The diacritical marks, which even most Arabs can't read the Quran without that now properly. So now he redefined bid'ah again, because that was done later. And then my father asked him several things, and he kept redefining what bid'ah was. So then in the end, my dad asked me, he says, tell me this. He says, this kingship that you have in your country, is this bid'ah or sunnah or mustahab? What is it? And so now, you see his eyes turning, because he knows if he answers this incorrectly, because, he's got the entourage there, somebody's going to report back and he's going to be dead. So, he's thinking, oh, what do I say? So he says, oh, you shouldn't look at what type of government it is. You should look at and see if they're allowing you to practice Islam. So my dad now is about to ask him, well, then, so if the Jews rule over you, are you going to be fine with that if they just allow you to make your salat? And he's about to ask him this, and the entourage people, oh, we got to go. The question is getting too tough now. We got to go. So these are guys who know, because he kept redefining it, which means that that the first definition you gave up there to everybody else wasn't correct. Right? But you choose because you have a certain agenda, a certain propaganda you need to spread. And, so this is, so that, you got to be, again, you don't want to label everybody as kafir or hypocrite or anything else. But you have to be very careful when you hear people who are undermining the status of Imam Hussein al-Islam or any member, Imam Hassan al-Islam, or any member of the family of Rasulullah, or, undermining the companions. And again, undermining the companions doesn't mean acknowledging their mistakes. We acknowledge their mistakes, but we also acknowledge that they made tawbah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected them. We acknowledge their mistakes because we need to know how do we fix ourselves when we make those mistakes. Okay? So even the mistakes of coming against Ali, as in the Battle of Siffin. So, these are all lessons for us. That's a roundabout answer on that. Because I can't tell you, okay, so-and-so is kafir and so-and-so is kafir, so-and-so. Unless, they're, they just, just blatantly do something. You can't, and it's hard to label a group in general as kafir, because within these groups you've got people who have been caught up in the propaganda who really, if you talk to them, well, they really don't believe like that, but they're just caught up in some propaganda. So again, you have to be careful. But when you see people that are undermining the household, then these are the people I want to avoid at all cost. Okay. Questions? Yeah, Brother Kelvin's not here today, so yeah. But yeah, and we'll be talking about Imam Hassan Islam on Friday, inshallah. But I know somebody's thinking of something. Because usually I'll get something later on. But you know, the good thing about asking the questions in this is because, you know, a lot of people, they think, oh, you know, I don't want to ask because I don't want to take up anybody else's time, but somebody else is also thinking the same thing. And so it's helpful, you know, because we kind of deal with it so everybody can hear it. And if somebody, you know, they look at things from a different perspective, then they can throw that in as well. Because there are things like, you know, I'll be thinking one thing and my train of thought goes in a certain direction, and I have an intention of coming back to a certain other perspective, and then, you know, of course, I keep going and keep going and keep going, and then I'm gone. And we never get back to the other perspective. So that serves as a reminder as well.
How did the skirmish end right there?
In the Battle of Jamal, brother's asking, how did it end? And of course, the army of Ali overwhelmed them. Eventually, you know, so you have, because you have, you know, when the leaders of the other side, you know, withdrew from their position, there were those hypocrites within that wanted to continue it, but they couldn't, you know, because again, Ali kind of subjugated the situation, or kind of withheld, or I guess what he kind of halted the situation. Ali also, he made Salatul Janazah on the people that came against him as well. Which again, because he knew, you know, in the Battle of Nahwan, when he was fighting the Khawarij, the deviants, he didn't make Salatul Janazah for them, because they're deviants, they're gone. Okay. Here, he made Salatul Janazah on the people that were martyred on the other sides, and he included them as martyrs. You know, and so that also is a lesson for us. Because again, you know, he knew, and this is also, you know, what people don't understand. This is why Uthman radiallahu anhu forbade anyone fighting on his behalf. Because he knew the propaganda was so deep that there were decent people who had been caught up in this. And if he fought them, physically fought them, then there were many innocent people who would have been killed. And he didn't want their blood on his hands. So here, Ali again, he's having to force the situation. Or rather, the situation is being forced upon him. And he's having to deal with it. But he also realizes that there are amongst them decent people. So he made, you know, he led their Salatul Janazah as well. So eventually, after the battle, you know, that situation was controlled. And, you know, Bibi Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha returned to Medina Munawwara. But then Ali radiallahu anhu's army continues on. And this is when they go to Siffin. And even there, for over 3 months, Ali radiallahu anhu is trying to come to an agreement without having to fight. So it wasn't like they got there and the armies on either side, they suddenly start fighting. No. There was talk back and forth for over 3 months before finally the battle began. And you know, and when he was asked about them, when he was asked to pray against the people of Sham, because you know Siffin is the people of Sham, he refused. 2 reasons. One is that he said that there are 40 Abdal in Sham. He didn't say there are 40 companions. Companions even above Abdal. Abdal is like, I guess you could call the spiritual police. Abdal is from Badr, so when one leaves, another one replaces him. So there are always 40 Abdal in Sham. He said, you know, I won't. So that, and the other thing that he says that they are our brothers, but they have been deceived against us. So, yeah, I wasn't intending on bringing this topic up right now, but you know, because of the questions that are related to it. You know, and these are important things. These are things that we've talked about, you know, over the years on Fridays, kind of extensively, in more details. And I guess, you know, at some point some of those videos will get put up, inshallah. But you know, these are important things to know now. You know, there was a time when you could get by not knowing these things. You know, but with the propaganda out there today, you got to know that, because you got to know how to defend the positions. Otherwise, you get caught up in that propaganda. And it doesn't matter where you go, you know, because the propaganda will find you. Even if you're alone in a house, you know, if you got the internet, propaganda is going to find you. So, anything else? We've got 10 more minutes, you know, unless y'all want to cut it quick early today. Anyone online or on the phone or whatever?
I think a lot of people don't grasp that every battle, even the skirmishes, was necessary. From a Carter standpoint.
From what standpoint?
From a Carter.
Oh, yes, yes. All right. Yeah, Brother Sharif is saying that most of us, we don't grasp that all of this and all the skirmishes and all the battles and everything that took place were necessary from the standpoint of qadr, of destination, of destiny, but also necessary, you know, from the standpoint of the lessons. You know, like when we look at Uhud, you know, if you look at the lessons that we gained from Uhud, you know, there's no way that we could have attained those lessons, you know, if Uhud had been a clear-cut victory, like it was starting out to be. You know, the same thing with, as I was saying, with Siffin. You know, Imam Shafi'i rahmatullah alayhi, he says that, you know, that verse that I mentioned earlier, the verse in Surah Hujurat, you know, where if two parties are, you know, fighting against each other, then, you know, Imam Shafi'i rahmatullah, he says that he took all of the rulings related to that verse from Siffin. You know, the issue between Ali and Muawiyah radiyallahu. And even there, you know, you have companions who tried to be neutral, who later on chastised themselves, because Abdullah ibn Umar, he would, whenever he would recite this verse, he would say that I did not fulfill, because he was one of those who tried to be neutral in this situation. And he said that I did not fulfill the rights of this verse. You know, so I also, you know, this realization that no, Ali is with the truth, and the truth is with Ali. You know, because a lot of times you learn more from those who are in error. You know, because you realize, okay, what do I do in that situation? Because again, like I said, you know, the companions are those stars. So when we make those mistakes, well, how do we correct ourselves? So I'll end here, inshallah, today. Yeah, we've got to vacuum up here as well. So You know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, grant us this understanding, and, you know, truly give us his love and the love of his Prophet, beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all of those whom they love. You know, because that is Iman. So, inshallah. Okay, so I'll end. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.